Chapter 1. Take a slow breath in. Let it fall gently out. Outside, the city keeps its own quiet rhythm. Street lamps flickering. Somewhere rain brushing the pavement like fingertips. This story opens not with drama, but with a hush, a door to stillness, a breath before change. Tom's life is not made of glitter or noise. It is built from repetition, from mornings that look like yesterday, and evenings that resemble last year. When his alarm rings, it does not shout. It simply reminds him of duty. He wakes, feeling the soft weight of his body still heavy with sleep. The room around him is small, walls worn, window frame holding thin scars of age. And yet, it is his sanctuary. He rises without a word. Silence is not loneliness here, but a familiar companion. Slow steps take him to the kitchenette. He knows every drawer, every chipped plate, every quiet clink. The pan warms. Oil meets egg in a hushed sizzle. This sound, so small, so ordinary, is one of the anchors of his days. Life is not always built on great miracles. Sometimes it rests in these gentle domestic sounds. He flips his toast halfway, knowing the old toaster only heats on one side. Even the brokenness has a rhythm here. Stepping outside, the city is not fully awake, yet the weight of the day has already arrived. Tom breathes out into the cold morning, and somewhere inside, a quiet sentence drifts through him. I am here again. Not a declaration, not a battle cry, just a simple, persistent truth. To be here, to continue, to show up. That in itself is a quiet form of courage. The metro is filled with silhouettes of other stories. People do not look at one another, but they move in a collective pulse. Sidewalk stairs, turnstile care. Tom stands, fingers curling around cold metal. Cold can comfort, because it is honest. Shoes, bags, jackets, tired shoulders, a sea of existence. And again a thought, softer than breath. Everyone carries something. At the warehouse, sound replaces thinking. Forklift beeps. Wooden pallets shift. Cardboard scent rises like steam. Monotony might break some spirits, but to Tom it brings a strange, meditative peace. When movement repeats enough times, it becomes a lullaby to the body. Lift, pull, pivot, stack. Hours pass not in boredom, but in muted acceptance. Lunch comes with Marcus's laughter, a round, generous sound that fills the cavernous space and warms the cold edges of steel and concrete. Tom smiles without speaking. Friendship does not always need voice. Sometimes, warmth travels without language. By the final hour, every joint feels the day. Shoulders ache, fingertips throb, breath thickens. This too will pass. Tom thinks, not as hope, not as despair, just as fact. Clock out comes like a soft release, not triumphant, just unwound tension. The city has changed its texture now. Days rush dissolving into evenings exhale. As Tom walks home, he is not entirely alone. The echo of countless footsteps, similar burdens, shared fatigue, walk with him. Then rain comes again. Not fierce, not impatient, just enough to remind the world that everything can be washed clean. 5 flights of stairs wait for him. But tonight, his breath carries a subtle shift. A question, not fully formed. A possibility, not yet spoken. On his table, watermarked and softened by weather, lies a lottery ticket. Not glowing, not divine, just paper. But sometimes paper holds the hinge of fate. He looks at it, not with hunger, but with quiet curiosity. Not hope, but wonder. The night is gentle. Rain taps. Walls breathe. Tom rests on his pillow, eyes drifting closed. He does not yet know how sharp the turn ahead will be, how silently life can rewire itself. For now, there is only the softness of fabric, the darkness that holds, and the calm weight of eyelids surrendering. The city sleeps. Rain whispers, and Tom moves, inch by inch, toward the shoreline of dreams, carried by nothing extraordinary, only the simple thought, I was here today, and in that thought, he drifts, lightly, quietly, into sleep. Chapter 2. Take a slow breath in. Let it drift out like a curtain easing across a window. Morning arrives without urgency. No trumpet of destiny. No lightning crack announcing change. Just the whisper of light finding the edges of the room. Tom wakes the way a tide returns. Steadily, without effort. The lottery ticket still rests where he left it. Paper drying from yesterday's rain. Edges slightly curled, like something that has traveled through weather, but remained whole. He does not rush to it. Rushing is not in his nature. He moves through his morning, as if nothing has shifted in the orbit of his life. Pan warms. Toast browns unevenly. The world is familiar, trustworthy in its repetition. Outside, dawn is pale and soft as linen. Only after breakfast, when the steam from his mug has thinned, when the room is quiet enough to hear himself breathing, does Tom lift the ticket. Numbers printed in ink, simple and almost shy, hold no obvious magic. He sits at the small kitchen table, the wood worn smooth by hours of elbows and thought. Then, slowly, he opens his phone and finds the results. The first number matches. His breath pauses, not held tight, just suspended in wonder. The second number matches too, not loudly, not shockingly, but like a soft chord easing into harmony. He blinks, uncertain. His fingers do not shake yet, but his pulse becomes a quiet drum. The third number aligns. Then the fourth. Time folds inward, not exploding with disbelief, but settling into a gravity more profound. The fifth, and finally, the sixth, all aligned, all correct, all his. Silence fills the room, not as emptiness, but as astonishment so delicate. It can only be met with stillness. He lays the ticket down, not as if it is fragile, but as if the air around it is changed. The world has not grown louder. If anything, it has softened, as if fate knows that too much sudden light can blind. Tom leans back in his chair, and breath returns, slowly, carefully, like a tide understanding new depth. No triumphant music swells. No shout escapes him. Just a long, slow exhale. So this is how it happens. He thinks, not with fireworks, not with crowds, but with rain-damp ink and quiet morning light. For the rest of the day, everything he does, walking, breathing, existing, feels as if it carries a new interior glow, not visible from the outside, not large enough to be seen by passing strangers, but warm beneath the ribs. Marcus laughs at lunch again, loud and bright, and Tom watches him, feeling not distance, but tenderness. He could tell him, could share this impossible secret, right here, between metal shelving and cardboard. But he doesn't. Some gifts must sit in silence before they can be spoken. At home, evening settles with its usual softness. Tom sits where dusk meets fabric, counting nothing, wanting nothing. There is no hunger in this one, no greed awakening, just a widening of horizon, a loosening of breath, a quiet release of the invisible weight that had lived on his shoulders. For years, he does not rush to claim the prize. He lets the night deepen, lets the moon stretch across the sky, like a slow hand smoothing a sheet. For hours, he just listens, to his heartbeat relearn calm. The rain starts again, gentler this time, as if the world worries he may break under too much change at once. When he finally sleeps, dreams do not come in gold or diamond brightness. They come as meadow light, as grandmother's voice humming somewhere far, as footsteps on soft soil. In the dream, he is not rich, nor transformed. He is simply free. The following morning, he walks to the lottery office, not with nerves, not with a swagger of luck, just a steady step, like someone returning a borrowed book. Sunlight warms the pavement, leaves shimmer with early light. Even air feels newly generous. Inside the office, paperwork appears. Pens click. People speak in professional cadence. But beneath it all, Tom remains a quiet lake. No ripple of panic. No wave of disbelief. Only deep breath, even and slow. When the woman behind the glass window finally looks up and says, "Congratulations, sir. You've won." He simply nods, as though she has confirmed something the universe had already told him. In a language older than sound, there will be press, questions, photographs dressed as curiosity, hands reaching toward him. But not today. Today belongs to stillness, to the miracle of breathing, without the anchor of fear. He walks home, wealth now written into his future. But his steps remain soft, measured, almost reverent, not because of money's power, but because of the quiet truth that his life has shifted without bruising the soul he built. At home again, he sets the ticket down. One last time. No fanfare, no framed display, just paper, on wood. He makes tea, watches steam twirl upward, and feels the gentle press of gratitude. Not for riches, but for timing. How life waited for him to ripen into someone who could receive without losing himself. Rain returns. Whisper light, its rhythm matching his breath. In 2, 3. Out 2, 3. The city rests. And in the dim amber of evening, Tom whispers to no one at all, just to the quiet air that now knows him differently. I'm still here. A new life forming, not with noise, but with the weightless grace of dawn touching glass. Chapter 3. In the days that follow, nothing rushes, though the world around Tom begins to shift. Letters, calls, inquiries blooming like unexpected flowers. He himself continues to move, in the rhythm of quiet mornings and soft evenings. He wakes as he always has, to the hush of light, to the familiarity of kettle steam, to the tiny creak of floorboard beneath his step. Wealth has arrived, but it has not rewritten the choreography of his breath. Not yet. The city, however, begins to notice. News travels strangely, not like a storm, but like fog creeping through alleyways, touching windows and whispers alike. A neighbor nods longer than usual. The shopkeeper's smile lingers, just a shade deeper than yesterday. No one asks, but everyone knows. It's not the kind of knowing that speaks. It's the kind that watches. Tom walks through it, almost as if moving underwater. Slower, less weight on ankles, more room around the heart. He does not flinch from attention, nor bask in it. He simply continues. In 2, 3. Out 2, 3. Breath remains his compass. When he reaches the warehouse for the final time, the air feels different, though the lights hum the same, and the forklifts cough out their usual sound. Marcus greets him, wide grin, with none of the envy Tom has quietly feared might now exist in the space between friendship. Instead, Marcus's joy is round and true, like a bell rung clearly. "Man, I heard. If it's real, I'm proud of you." No question mark. No hungry gleam. Just softness. Tom does not confirm. He does not deny. He simply places a hand on Marcus's shoulder and lets silence say what words cannot. "Thank you for knowing me before wealth knew my name." Work ends. For the last time, Tom leaves his badge on the desk, not with sentiment, but with gentle closure. The supervisor nods, not quite meeting his eyes, not out of discomfort, but reverence, the kind of gaze one gives to someone whose life has stepped beyond the border of shared circumstance. There is no celebration, no farewell party, no final handshake line, just the soft release of a chapter ending exactly as it was always lived, quietly. The next morning brings letters, stacks of them, some congratulating, some requesting, some begging, for investments, for donations, for miracles they think are his to give. But even in the swell of ink and paper, Tom feels no panic. He organizes them into a neat pile, like a librarian arranging stories by calm. One by one, he opens them, not to respond, not yet, but to witness, to bear gentle witness, to the way human hearts react, to sudden fortune. A cousin he barely remembers speaks of childhood he never shared, a distant acquaintance writes of business ventures conceived overnight. A stranger sends a prayer, not asking for money, only hoping peace finds him. In prosperity, Tom reads them all, as if reading weather. Sun, storm, mist, clarity, all valid, all passing. Days expand, not into extravagance, not into indulgence, but into space. Time becomes wide, like a window opened after years of breathing recycled air. He walks more. He sits in parks and lets wind comb through his thoughts. He eats slowly, tastes texture, not merely food. The city, still bustling, now feels less like machinery and more like pulse. For the first time, life is not survival, but presence. He buys a home, not a palace, not an echoing mansion with walls too tall to touch, but a place with wooden floors and wide windows, and a garden where quiet things can grow. Birds visit each morning, landing on the low fence, with feathered greetings. Grass bows under dew. Sun warms the floor, in soft apricot tones. Nothing grand, everything real. Wealth does not inflate him. Instead, it loosens him, like a knot slowly releasing. After years of tension, he begins to sleep deeper, not from exhaustion, but from ease. Dreams shift, no longer warehouses, no longer heavy pallets or aching wrists. Now they hold meadowlight, soft laughter, the hint of his grandmother humming, long ago in a kitchen filled with lemon sunlight. The press eventually finds him, cameras waiting, voices eager, flashes burst like tiny suns, questions unfold like wings. How does it feel? What will you do next? Who were you before you won? Before, as though the version of him that lifted boxes, that counted coins carefully, that breathed through ache, as though that man is past tense. Tom answers with calm. I am still him, not for show, not to sound humble, but because it is true. Money has changed circumstance, not essence. The reporters seem unsatisfied. Their hunger is for spectacle, transformation, identity rebirth. But Tom offers only breathing space. A man unchanged is not a headline. They know how to write. And so the crowd fades, like tide retreating from a quiet shore. Alone again, he sits in his new garden at dusk. Wind moves through leaves, gentle, curled at the edges of evening. He feels gratitude, not loud, not overflowing, but smooth, like a pebble warmed by sun and palm. He whispers into twilight, thank you for arriving softly, because fate, so often imagined as thunder or lightning, came to him, like rain on a window, steady, unassuming, healing. Night deepens. Stars appear with their measured glow, not dazzling, just enough. Tom lies in bed, not buried by dreams of gold, but held by the quiet liberty of not worrying how tomorrow will be paid for. His breath slows naturally. In 2, 3. Out 2, 3. Sleep approaches not as escape, but as invitation. Gentle, warm, purpose renewed without rush. And as his eyes close, Tom understands something. Wealth alone cannot buy. Peace is not in having much, but in no longer fearing loss. He drifts, light as dust caught in moonbeam, toward rest. Not toward change, not toward reinvention, but toward a deeper version of who he already is. Chapter 4. The days widen gently. Where some might rush toward opulence, Tom gravitates instead toward stillness, toward measured mornings, and evenings that breathe. Wealth becomes not a trophy, but a quiet tool, something to lift weight, not to make noise. The first act of giving comes without ceremony. He returns to the old neighborhood, where brick buildings lean slightly with age, and windows carry the thin lace of time. There, beneath a roof that has long needed tending, lives Mrs. Ravenwood, a retired teacher, whose voice was once chalk-dusted and filled with gentle certainty. She opens her door and finds Tom on her step, holding nothing in his hands but intention. No camera, no announcement, no reporters scribbling, just him. He offers to repair her home. Roof, plumbing, the stairs that creak like brittle memory. She tries to refuse at first, practical pride rising like a shield. But Tom's gaze is steady, humble, weighted with sincerity. You helped so many learn to stand. Let me help your walls stand for you. The acceptance arrives quietly, with a nod dressed in soft gratitude. Work begins, hammers echoing not as disruption, but as renewal. Each plank fitted, each nail placed, not with haste, but with the tenderness of honoring years lived. Another day, another door. Marcus this time, not a charity case, not a duty, but a brother chosen by circumstance. They sit together on a bench, beneath thinning autumn leaves. The world is amber, fading into copper and quiet. Tom tells him the truth, not rushed, not guarded, just open. Marcus listens, eyes wet but unmoving. He does not ask for anything, does not calculate, does not reshape their friendship into need or advantage. He simply exhales a long breath that seems to release decades of strain. I'm glad it happened to someone who stayed human. The words settle not as a compliment, but as a blessing. Tom offers him partnership, not a gift, not a lifeline, a joining. Together, they begin to imagine a housing project, a place for those who live paycheck to paycheck, who sleep in the narrow margins of life, whose hope has been folded so many times. It has worn thin at the seams. Marcus smiles, a smile with soil in it, roots, commitment. He says yes, not to money, but to meaning. The plans unfold slowly, deliberately, without pomp. No billboards, no logos, no speeches carved from ego. Just buildings being repaired, spaces being warmed, pillows finding heads that have known too many cold nights. A woman named Chin joins them, architect of quiet kindness, designer of humane corners, and windows that let morning in, without glare. Together, the three form not a business, but a balm. The city begins to speak again, this time not in gossip, but in gratitude. A landlord reduces rent when he hears Tom's name attached. A grocer begins to donate weekly produce to residents moving into the restored units. Even the mail carrier stops one afternoon to rest a hand on Tom's shoulder and offers simply, "It matters what you're doing, more than you know." No applause, no parade, just the acknowledgement of difference made quietly. With every restored home, every warmed room, Tom feels something long dormant stir within him, a sense not of charity, but of belonging. He is not giving, not bestowing, not saving. He is returning what life has given, in a form gentler, softer, usable. Wealth does not inflate him. It diffuses him, spreading outward, becoming light in places that once sat in shadow. Sometimes he visits these new spaces at night. He walks hallways that now smell of fresh paint instead of mildew, hears laughter bouncing off walls that used to hold only resignation. Children run where silence once lived. A kettle whistles. A lullaby drifts from a cracked open door, and Tom stands in the corridor, hands in pockets, letting the sound of ordinary life become the sweetest music he has ever known. Not wealth, not applause, but dishes clinking, feet pattering, beds settling, human noise, light as feathers. In his own home, evenings remain uncluttered. He cooks simple meals, sits in the garden, listens to wind sift through leaves. Sometimes he feels his grandmother there, not in voice, but in the faint scent of lavender, and the memory of hands that soothed. Without need for explanation, he thanks her in the quiet for the lessons she left. That dignity is not posture, but presence. That kindness is not flair, but fidelity. And yet, with light comes shadow, not bitter, not threatening, just real. Letters continue to arrive, some gentle, some barred with want. People approach, with rehearsed sorrow and urgent narratives. Tom listens, always listens, but does not bend to guilt-woven pleas. Wealth may be tool, but it must not become a leash. He chooses stillness, boundaries, distribution led by clarity, rather than impulse. Generosity should never be panic. At night, he lies under the soft hush of stars. Marcus's laughter, Chin's blueprints, Mrs. Ravenwood's repaired stairs, all form constellations. Across his mind, sleep gathers him carefully, not as escape, but as acknowledgement. You have done enough for today. His breath slows. In 2, 3. Out 2, 3. Curtains move gently. In the windows breeze. Outside, someone in one of the restored buildings turns off their lamp. Safe, warm, sheltered. Tom closes his eyes knowing that life, when shared quietly, does not divide. It multiplies. Softly, he drifts, the world humming on, without demand, without glare, only the steady pulse of goodness, given room to grow. Chapter 5. Take one slow inhale. Let it drift outward, as though the night itself is breathing with you. The world around Tom has warmed, softened, brightened in corners once dim. But even light, if held too long without rest, can grow heavy. In the gentle current of giving, something begins to change in Tom. Not loudly, not suddenly, but like the first hint of autumn, in a tree still dressed in summer green. A quiet fatigue, not of regret, not of burden, but of weight carried with care. Day after day, he signs documents, meets with planners, visits new residents, whose eyes shine with relief. Joy fills him. Yes, but joy also has a heartbeat, and every heartbeat needs stillness. One evening, he sits in the garden, with dusk pooling like ink around his feet. The wind is soft, but his lungs feel full of all the voices, all the stories he has welcomed into his life. He wonders, without fear, without complaint, how much of himself can be offered before he must return to silence. The tea cools in his hands as stars begin to gather, and he feels it, the subtle ache of a soul stretched beyond its habitual shape. He shuts his eyes, and the night hums, as if to say, rest is part of kindness. But rest is not what the world brings. News outlets return, crowding calm, unsettling air, this time not curious, insistent. They want the housing story, the numbers, the budgets, the transformation arc. They want the man-made myth, not the man who breathes. Tom opens his door, not wide, just enough. Flashbulbs bloom like anxious suns. Microphones tilt toward him, as though his quiet must be translated into spectacle. Questions pour. How many units have been built? Is this a public project or personal philanthropy? Do you plan to expand nationwide? Are you a savior figure for low-income communities? He listens, but like a stone listens to rain, unmoved, unharmed. When they finish, he answers, "Homes are for living, not headlines." A sentence without spark, but with gravity. Some reporters withdraw, disappointed in the lack of spectacle. Others scribble eagerly. They know quiet can be sold as mystery. But Tom steps back, closing the door, with the care one uses. When sealing a letter to the past, Marcus visits that night, carrying takeout in tired arms. They sit on the floor, food containers spread like a small feast. Marcus watches him carefully, friendship's gaze, untrained in intrusion, but fluent in noticing. "You're thinner," he says gently. Tom smiles, as if the observation itself is an embrace. "I'm stretched," he replies. "Not absent, not emptied, just stretched." Marcus nods, not offended, not dramatic. Then we share the weight more evenly. And in that sentence, Tom feels a loosening. Partnership is not simply joined effort. It is joined breath. Days pass more softly when shared. Shin begins organizing meetings. Without Tom attending each one, Marcus fields calls, deflects curiosity, protects the edges of Tom's quiet. The world begins to understand that generosity can exist without ceaseless performance. Yet fatigue is a patient visitor. It does not leave after politeness. It lingers in Tom's sleep, turning dreams into long corridors, where voices echo, gratitude, request, need. He wakes not in panic, but in saturation. Sometimes, the weight of kindness is simply the accumulation of stories. Tom does not resent them. He honors them, but he begins to seek, not escape, but solitude that heals. He travels, not far, not famously. 14. A small coastal town, a room with salt in the walls, and windows that open to the sea. There is nothing here to fix, to fund, to build, just tide, and breeze, and horizon. The ocean speaks slowly, repeating a simple line. Be small again. How long it had been since he felt small, in a way that soothed, rather than diminished. Morning arrives with gulls and pale blue quiet. Tom walks barefoot along the shoreline, sand cool beneath his arch. Each step draws tension out, like thread through cloth. He watches the tide lift, retreat, lift again. No decision required of him, no expectation. He sits cross-legged, eyes on the seam where sky meets water. Breathing deep, he feels the body reclaim itself from responsibility, not abandoning goodness, just remembering selfhood. At night, he writes a single note to Marcus and Chun. Keep going. I will return when my heart rests. Not dramatic, not disappearing, just pausing, because even rivers must pool sometimes before flowing on. The moon hangs over the water, like a lantern of belonging. Waves hush the sand, slow as lullaby. Tom lays down, listening to the breath of the earth, realizing that generosity must include the self, or else it becomes extraction. He is not leaving the mission, not releasing the dream, only releasing the notion that he must be its constant engine. He lets go, and in letting go, he feels whole. In 2, 3, out, 2, 3. Sleep arrives, not because he is exhausted, but because he is allowed. He drifts, wave-light, moon-warmed, into rest that does not erase, but replenishes. Chapter 6. Let the inhale arrive gently, and let the exhale fall like sand loosening from a dune. Tom remains by the sea, not hiding, not absent, simply present, in a smaller, quieter shape of life. Here, time no longer ticks. It drifts. Morning is not schedule, but tide. Evening is not closure, but hush. The cottage he rents is small, whitewashed, with windows that lean toward the horizon, as if listening. In the first days, he wakes late, steps barefoot to the porch, and watches gulls fold light into their wings. Breakfast is fruit, bread still warm from the bakery down the hill, tea made with seawater air still on his shirt. No calls, no decisions, no voices asking for direction, only the ocean, speaking the same word, again and again, in different waves. Return, not return to pressure, but to essence. He walks the shoreline daily, not to reach any place, but to let place reach him. The sand remembers every footfall, and then releases them, without keeping score. Tom feels something in himself, loosening in the same way. Stories he carried, faces he held, worries, gratitudes, all dissolving into something simpler. Breath becomes language. In 2, 3. Out, 2, 3. Seabirds call in long vowels. Wind threads through meadow grass. With a softness that hums, he begins to sleep not because he needs rest, but because the world around him is practicing rest on his behalf. Days stretch with tide logic. Rise, fall, rise, fall. No ambition, no finish line, just rhythm. Where city hours once pulled his thoughts tight, sea hours open them like pages. Note by note, memory returns, not with sting, but with silk edges. He sees his grandmother again, not in dream this time, but in recollection so gentle. It feels like echo rather than ache. Her voice carrying flower dust, her hands steady even when the world was not. Her lessons were never grand, never loud. Quiet can be strength. Stillness feeds the spirit. Life is not earned, only tended. She had so little, and yet she gave as though provision was breath-driven, endless. Tom sits on a salt-smooth rock and lets the memory wash through him. Not grasped, not clung to, just received. Evenings pull lavender color across the sky. Boats return, nets heavy with fish and salt. Tom watches them dock, a choreography older than language. One evening, a fisherman, broad in shoulder, skin browned by sun and certainty, greets him with a nod. No curiosity, no recognition, just equal breath presence. They sit together on overturned crates, saying nothing for a long time. Finally, the fisherman speaks. You're letting the world catch up to itself, aren't you? Tom doesn't answer at first, but the fisherman doesn't seem to require reply. He offers a slice of bread, still warm from an unseen kitchen. Tom takes it, and in that small exchange, something inside him anchors. Connection without demand, company without cost. Nights hold ocean hush like cathedral air. Tom begins a ritual. He opens the cottage window, just enough for the tide to be audible, lies down, and lets his breath synchronize. Wave in, wave out. Not meditation, not practice, just kinship. In these hours, he feels the shape of himself again. Not the philanthropist, not the lucky winner, not the quiet savior of homes. Just Tom, a person made of gentle persistence, soft mornings, and the ache of having cared deeply. As weeks fold into each other, his spirit grows new roots. Strength returns not as intensity, but as balance. Generosity no longer feels like a pouring out, but a flowing through, helping, resting, breathing, being. He writes sometimes in a small notebook, words not meant for public sight. I am allowed to be simple. No soul is required to be endless. Quiet is not retreat. It is soil. He closes the notebook without conclusion and sets it by the windowsill, to be warmed by sun, cooled by moon. One twilight, when the water glows copper, Tom feels something arrive. A readiness, not urgency, not push, just a gentle shift in the inner tide. The ocean has done its work. The solitude has fed him. The silence has rinsed him clean. Tomorrow, he will return, but not in the shape he left. He will go back not as savior, not as architect of others' relief, but as equal participant in a shared kindness. His work is not finishing, nor escaping. It is continuing, with softer edges. Before sleep, he walks to the surf one last time. Waves reach for his ankles. Cool as first truth. Stars blink open above. No different than the first night he arrived, yet entirely changed within him. He whispers quietly, to the water, to the moon, to his grandmother's memory, to the self he carried here. I am whole again. The sea answers the only way it knows. By breathing. Tom's own breath mirrors it. In 2, 3. Out, 2, 3. He heads back to the cottage, footprints fading instantly behind him. He does not need them to last. He has learned the difference between presence and permanence. When he lies down, sleep comes not as a wave this time, but as a tide that has found perfect equilibrium. He is not drifting from responsibility, nor pulled toward it, but held exactly between, suspended, in balance. No wealth could ever purchase, no task could ever demand. A peace earned not by achievement, but by allowance. He sleeps, moonlit, ocean-cradled, complete. Chapter 7. Take a soft inhale. Let it fall back into the room, like light settling on water. Tom returns, not with fanfare, not with declaration, but with the quiet posture of someone who has learned the precise weight his heart can carry. The city receives him differently this time, not as a figure of luck, not as a headline, but as a familiar rhythm. Returning to an old street, Marcus meets him first, outside the new housing units, beneath fresh paint and windows that no longer shiver in winter wind. He walks toward Tom, not as an assistant greeting a benefactor, but as a friend approaching home. No questions, no explanations, just an embrace, warm and ordinary, as though nothing has shifted, except the seasons. You look rested, Marcus says. Eyes soft. I remember how to breathe, Tom replies. They sit on the stoop together. The building behind them murmurs with life. Pans clinking. Children practicing bedtime whispers. Lullabies curling like steam. Home sounds. The very thing they worked to create. Chin arrives later, carrying rolls of blueprints and the scent of coffee. She does not hug him, but her smile is a map of everything that continued. In his absence, you trusted us, she says. Tom shakes his head gently. I trusted the work, and that truth sits between them, not as modesty, but as faith. Inside, the hallways bloom with color. Light dances on surfaces that used to hold only shadow. Marcus explains softly, not presenting, just sharing. New childcare programs, community dinners, a lending library, made from donated books, stacked like hope in binding form. Chin describes structural choices that make warmth sustainable, thicker insulation, sun-catching windows, gardens shared by all. Their words are not boasts. They are simply continuations. Tom listens, heart steady, no urge to correct, no weight to resume control. The work no longer belongs to him alone. It belongs to all who live within it. His role, once catalyst, has become current, flowing through, no longer forced forward. Later, when evening softens the edges of buildings, Tom walks alone through the courtyard. Children play with chalk, drawings bright on pavement, houses with open doors, trees with wide roots, stick figures holding hands. He feels tears gather, not heavy, not sorrowful, just true. A little girl, hair wild with imagination, runs up to him. Are you the man who made us a home? He kneels, not to lower himself, but to meet her world, exactly where it stands. I helped, he says, but you make it home. She grins, as though he has unlocked the only answer needed, and runs back into the dusk, colored with her chalk galaxies. Tom remains there, in twilight quiet, watching as apartment windows begin to flicker like constellations. Each one, a universe. He does not count them as success. He counts them as belonging. A belonging not to him, but to those who needed it, and now hold it with the casual grace of people finally safe. That night, Marcus invites him to stay for dinner. A simple stew, bread warm enough to steam. They sit at a long table, surrounded by residents, elders with weathered laughter, young parents with brighter eyes than they once had, teenagers dreaming out loud. Conversation is easy, unpolished, stitched together with humanity. Tom doesn't speak much. He absorbs. He is no longer seen as savior, but as neighbor, a status more precious than myth. Later, as he walks back to his own home, the city feels lighter, not physically, not architecturally, but in spirit, as though every repaired wall has taken one piece of burden off the collective back. He unlocks his door, steps inside the quiet, and is greeted by his garden. In moonlit silver, lavender has grown taller. Then when he left, he touches it gently, thinking of his grandmother, her voice folded into memory. Things grow best when seen without demand. Sleep approaches easily now, not because he is tired, but because he is full. He lies in bed, and before dreams arrive, he recognizes a truth he could not name before. Giving does not mean dissolving. Sharing does not mean containing all. Kindness does not require martyrdom. He has found something, both softer and stronger than purpose. Continuity, goodness that breathes, rotates, belongs to many hands. He is only one of them, and that, he realizes, is the peace he sought. His breath slows. In 2, 3. Out 2, 3. The city hums softly. Leaves rustle. Stars appear without spectacle. He drifts, not away, but deeper in, to belonging, to community, to the quiet promise that what he started now sustains itself. No spotlight, no burden, no endless need, only rhythm and rest. Chapter 8. Take one last gentle inhale, the kind that fills but does not stretch, and exhale, as though setting something tender back into its place. This is the final arc, not an ending, but a settling, a quiet landing. After a long flight through light and shadow, time moves forward. In its unhurried way, Tom does not chase it, nor resist it. He lives now in the steady center of what he once set in motion. The housing project grows, not explosively, not commercially, but organically, like ivy learning its way along brick. Marcus and Chun continue the work. Meetings, repairs, new units. Policies written with warmth instead of warning. Tom attends sometimes, but not as figurehead, not as owner. He sits in the back, slides into conversations, only when invited, like a memory that still breathes. The city no longer sees him as miracle, but as neighborly constant. That, to him, is the truest form of honor. On quiet mornings, he walks the path behind his home, where trees now arch like cathedral ribs. Over the grass, children from the new units sometimes run past him, shouting names, dragging kite tails. They do not point, do not whisper, do not turn him into symbol. He is simply Mr. Tom, a man who nods, smiles, and keeps pace with his own breath. This recognition, unadorned, human, is the sweetest. Years soften, not harshly, but like velvet worn smooth by touch. Tom begins to gray around the edges, hair like frost, movements a bit slower, eyes gentler than ever. He does not grieve aging. He greets it, like an old friend arriving with history in his bones and peace in his palms. He spends afternoons in the garden, dirt beneath fingernails, lavender brushing his wrists. He tends tomato vines, talks to the bees, without expecting reply. Sometimes Marcus visits, no longer with updates or urgent reports, but with leftover pasta, with weekend jokes, with the ease of proven trust. Sometimes Chun sits on the patio, blueprints replaced, by tea and quiet weather talk. They do not discuss expansion, or articles, or legacy. They talk about soup recipes, about how fast the sunflowers turned this year, about Mrs. Ravenwood's porch cat, and its newfound arrogance. Tom's grandmother remains with him, not as ache, not as ghost, but as inheritance of gentleness. He hears her sometimes, when wind crosses the garden. Life is not about what you hold. It is about what you allow to grow. He has allowed growth, not of empire, but of belonging, not of monument, but of home. In winter, snow silences the city, not a cold silence, a quilted one, soft at the edges. Tom sits by the window, tea warming his palms, and watches the building lights across the courtyard flicker on, one by one, like constellations reassembling themselves. Every evening, inside those rooms, families eating, babies sleeping, elderly feet resting in slippers that finally fit comfort. He did not give them life, nor rescue them from fate. He simply made space, shelter, structure, walls that do not shrink. When wind hardens, the world filled the rest. One night, when snow has turned the street to pearl, Tom steps outside, letting the cold kiss his breath. Marcus stands across the courtyard, waving lazily, coat unbuttoned, face softened by lamplight. Chun leans from her balcony, smiling into the hush. There are no words. There is no speech required. Winter holds them all, in a hush that feels like completion. Tom raises his hand in return, and in that gesture, small, simple, unembellished, a life's arc settles. He does not need applause, plaques, or pages written in his name. He has the sound of families, closing doors gently at night, the smell of soup simmering in kitchens that once held only draft and dust. He has lavender in his garden, and the memory of finding breath. By the sea, he has enough. Later, in bed, he lies beneath a quilt that carries sunlight from summers past, and sleeps not as someone weary, but as someone whole. His breath slow. In 2, 3. Out 2, 3. He dreams of waves, not crashing, just approaching, retreating, returning. A rhythm like the one he carries now. Steady, clean, undemanding. The peace he found did not arrive with wealth, nor with recognition. It arrived when he understood that life is neither taken nor won, only held, tended, shared, and eventually set gently down. Outside, night deepens, quiet and unafraid. Homes glow with soft lamps. Streets breathe frost. Windows cradle warmth. Somewhere, children fall asleep, beneath roofs that do not leak. Somewhere, an old teacher walks safely down repaired stairs. Somewhere, a boy who once counted coins to survive rests without counting anything at all. And the city, touched and changed in ways too subtle for headlines, continues its pulse, steady as his chest, soft as his last exhale, before sleep folds him inward again, not toward ending, but toward lasting, toward legacy that does not need to be named, to be real.